The summer of 1978 in rural Alabama was a tapestry of cicada song, long humid days, and the sweet, heavy scent of honeysuckle. But for one family, that summer would forever be etched in their memory not by warmth, but by an icy dread that descended with the twilight. It began with an empty driveway, a silent house, and a simple note left on a kitchen table, a note that spoke of a fleeting errand, a quick return. But Barbara Jean Barber would never return. Her car, a familiar blue Monte Carlo, was found abandoned miles away, its doors locked, its interior undisturbed, a silent testament to a life that had vanished without a trace. The tranquility of Wilcox County was shattered, replaced by a chilling question that echoed through every whispered conversation. What happened to Barbara Jean Barber? Before we delve deeper into this chilling cold case, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and help us share these stories with more people. Your support makes a real difference. Barbara Jean Barber was more than just a missing person. She was a vibrant, integral thread in the fabric of her community. At 46 years old, she was a wife, a mother of 2 grown children, and a cherished friend. Described by those who knew her as kind-hearted, meticulously organized, and deeply devoted to her family, Barbara was a woman who radiated warmth and capability. She worked as an accountant, her precision and dedication admired by colleagues. Her home, a modest but welcoming residence in the small community of Catherine, Alabama, was often filled with laughter and the aroma of home-cooked meals. Her daughter, Teresa, remembered her mother as someone who always had a plan, someone who never left things to chance. Her disappearance was not just a personal tragedy, it was an unraveling of the secure, predictable world that Barbara had so carefully cultivated for herself and her loved ones. Wilcox County, Alabama, in 1978 was, in many respects, a place suspended in time. It was a predominantly rural landscape, characterized by sprawling farmlands, dense pine forests, and winding country roads. Small communities like Catherine were tight-knit, where everyone knew everyone, and a stranger's car was noticed instantly. Trust was a given, and unlocked doors were common. The closest city, Camden, served as the county seat, a hub for local commerce and the occasional town gathering. Life moved at a slower pace, dictated by the rhythms of agriculture and community events. The idea of a violent crime, especially one as perplexing as a disappearance, was almost unthinkable. This was a place where neighbor helped neighbor, and a sense of collective security permeated the air. The vastness of the natural landscape, usually a source of peace, suddenly felt ominous, its dense woods capable of concealing secrets too terrible to imagine. July 11, 1978, began like any other Tuesday for Barbara Jean Barber. She had spent the day at her accounting job in Camden. In the late afternoon, she returned home to Catherine. Her husband, Oscar Barber, was away on business, a common occurrence. Before sunset, Barbara left a note for her daughter, Teresa, who was expected home soon. The note, scribbled quickly, stated she was running a quick errand to the post office and would be right back. It was a mundane detail, a routine act. Teresa arrived home shortly after, found the note, and thought nothing of it. But as dusk deepened into night and Barbara still hadn't returned, a knot of unease began to tighten in Teresa's stomach. She called neighbors, then other family members. No one had seen Barbara. The post office was closed. Panic began to set in. The next morning, the blue Monte Carlo was discovered. It was parked on a desolate, rarely used stretch of gravel road in the neighboring county of Dallas, several miles from Catherine. The car was locked, pristine, showing no signs of struggle or forced entry. Barbara's purse and belongings were still inside. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air, leaving only her vehicle as a silent, perplexing sentinel. Early police response was swift but yielded little. Deputies meticulously searched the area around the car, but the dense undergrowth and sweltering summer heat made the task arduous. There were no witnesses who saw her car being left there, no footprints, no stray clues. The case was immediately baffling. How could someone disappear so completely, so discreetly, in such a quiet, isolated place? The initial investigation into Barbara Jean Barber's disappearance was met with immediate frustration. Wilcox County Sheriff's deputies, along with agents from the Alabama Bureau of Investigation, ABI, pored over every detail. They interviewed family, friends, and anyone who might have seen Barbara on that fateful Tuesday. The car was processed for fingerprints and any forensic evidence, but the results were inconclusive. One of the first theories considered was a voluntary disappearance. Perhaps Barbara had decided to leave her life behind. But those closest to her vehemently rejected this idea. Barbara was devoted to her family, her work, and her routine. Such an act would have been entirely out of character. Furthermore, why leave her car, locked and undisturbed, with her purse inside? It defied logic. Another strong theory revolved around foul play. The abandoned car, the lack of a body, pointed towards an abduction. But without a crime scene, without any witnesses to a struggle, investigators had no starting point. Who would want to harm Barbara? She was a woman without known enemies, respected and liked by everyone she encountered. The quiet community of Catherine struggled to reconcile this brutality with the gentle soul they knew. A massive search effort was launched. Hundreds of volunteers, alongside law enforcement, combed the vast woods and fields of Wilcox and Dallas counties. They walked grid patterns, waded through swamps, and peered into abandoned structures. The humid air hung heavy with mosquitoes and unspoken fears. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still, there was no sign of Barbara. Tips poured in, some credible, many outlandish, each one leading to a dead end. Public reaction was a mix of shock, fear, and a desperate hope that Barbara would be found. The local newspapers carried daily updates, the headlines a grim reminder of the unsolved mystery. The entire region held its breath, wondering if a predator was lurking in their peaceful midst. Over the next few years, the case grew colder. Investigators pursued every lead, no matter how small. They interviewed local drifters, individuals with minor criminal records, anyone who might have been in the area. But each line of inquiry eventually fizzled out. The original officers on the case retired, files were meticulously stored, but the active pursuit of answers waned. Barbara Jean Barber became a photograph on a bulletin board, a name in a cold case file, her story a whispered tragedy in Wilcox County. The family, though never losing hope, had to learn to live with the agonizing silence. For the Barber family, the passing of time did not heal the wound of Barbara's absence, it merely deepened it. Oscar, her husband, carried the burden of not knowing for decades. Her children, Teresa and her brother, lived with an aching void, constantly searching for answers, for closure that never came. Holidays were particularly painful, the empty chair at the table a stark reminder of their profound loss. The initial flurry of media attention and community support slowly faded, replaced by the quiet, enduring ache of unresolved grief. Years passed, blurring into decades. The physical landscape around Catherine changed, but the emotional landscape of the Barber family remained fixed in that summer of 1978. Birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, all milestones were marked by the ghost of Barbara Jean. Teresa, in particular, became an unwavering advocate for her mother, keeping the flame of memory alive. She made sure that local law enforcement, even as new generations of officers came and went, never forgot Barbara Jean Barber. The case became a part of the family's identity, a constant undercurrent to their daily lives. The passage of time brought with it an increasing sense of despair, the hope of finding Barbara alive slowly diminishing, replaced by the desperate plea for simply finding her, for understanding what had happened. The passage of time, while cruel to the Barber family, also held an unexpected ally: advancements in forensic science. As the millennium turned, new technologies emerged, offering a glimmer of hope for cold cases like Barbara Jean Barber's. In the early 2000s, the Alabama Bureau of Investigation, spurred by a renewed focus on unsolved mysteries and the persistent advocacy of Teresa Barber, decided to revisit the case. The original evidence from 1978, meticulously preserved, was re-examined. Crucially, the The clothing Barbara was believed to have been wearing on the day she disappeared, discovered near the abandoned Monte Carlo, was sent for a new round of forensic testing. Techniques like touch DNA, non-existent in 1978, could now potentially extract genetic material from even the smallest biological traces. It was a long shot, a desperate attempt to coax secrets from silent fabrics. Then, a breakthrough. From a tiny speck of biological material on the clothing, forensic scientists were able to develop a DNA profile. This profile was then uploaded to the National DNA Database, CODI's Combined DNA Index System, a repository that links DNA evidence from crime scenes to known offenders. The waiting was agonizing, but the promise of a potential match, even after so many decades, was exhilarating. The long-dormant file of Barbara Jean Barber was alive again, buzzing with the possibility of finally revealing its truth. On March 27, 2006, nearly 28 years after Barbara Jean Barber vanished, the silence was finally shattered. Investigators, armed with the DNA evidence, announced an arrest that sent shockwaves through the quiet communities of Wilcox and Dallas counties. The man charged with Barbara's murder was Louis Henry Legrone. The revelation was stunning. Legrone was 52 years old at the time of his arrest, a resident of Selma, Alabama, and a seemingly ordinary man who had lived a quiet life for decades. He was not a stranger to the area. In fact, he had been a young man of 24 back in 1978, working in the area. What made the arrest particularly shocking was his seeming lack of connection to Barbara. He wasn't a disgruntled acquaintance, a jilted lover, or a known enemy. He was simply a man who lived a few counties away, someone Barbara likely never knew. The news spread like wildfire. For the Barber family, it was a moment of profound, almost surreal relief mixed with a fresh wave of pain. Oscar Barber, who had carried the burden for so long, finally had a name. Teresa, who had fought tirelessly for justice, saw a tangible step toward understanding. For the wider community, the arrest reopened old wounds, bringing back the fear and uncertainty of 1978, but also offering the first real glimpse of answers. The question that lingered for so long, who did this, finally had a potential answer, one that was both unexpected and deeply unsettling. The case against Louis Henry Legrone, while decades in the making, rested almost entirely on the silent, unwavering testimony of science. The most crucial piece of evidence was the DNA profile. The biological material found on Barbara Jean Barber's clothing provided a direct, irrefutable link to Legrone. In 2006, DNA evidence was considered the gold standard in forensic science, its power to identify individuals virtually absolute. Investigators also revisited Legrone's past. They learned that he had been living and working in the area in 1978, placing him geographically close to where Barbara's car was found and where she was last seen. While there was no known personal connection between Legrone and Barbara, the DNA evidence suggested a chance encounter, a random act of violence. The prosecution's theory was that Legrone had likely abducted Barbara when she was running her errand, driven her to the isolated spot where her car was found, and then taken her into the nearby woods. Though Barbara's remains were never found, the DNA evidence, coupled with the circumstances of her disappearance, was compelling. The defense argued the lack of a body, but the prosecution countered that the DNA placed Legrone at the scene of the crime, and the prolonged absence of Barbara, a woman who would never voluntarily abandon her life, was proof of her death. The evidence, though collected nearly 3 decades prior, spoke with a clarity that time could not diminish. It was a testament to the perseverance of cold case investigators and the incredible evolution of forensic capabilities. The trial of Louis Henry Legrone brought Barbara Jean Barber's case back into the spotlight. In 2008, Legrone was convicted of kidnapping in connection with her disappearance. While a murder conviction proved difficult without the discovery of her remains, the kidnapping charge provided a measure of justice. Legrone was sentenced to life in prison, finally facing accountability for his actions, albeit not for the full extent of the crime the family believed he committed. For the Barber family, the conviction brought a complex mix of emotions. There was relief that a perpetrator had been identified and imprisoned, that Barbara's name had been cleared of any suggestion of voluntary disappearance. However, the profound sadness of never finding her body, of never being able to lay her to rest, lingered. The lack of a complete narrative of her final moments remained an open wound. Despite this, the case of Barbara Jean Barber became a powerful testament to the tireless efforts of cold case investigators and the relentless determination of a family seeking answers. It underscored the importance of preserving evidence, even seemingly insignificant traces, for future forensic analysis. The story of Barbara Jean Barber serves as a stark reminder that, even after decades, justice can still be found, offering a measure of closure, even if not absolute peace, to those left behind. Her legacy lives on not just in the memories of her loved ones, but also in the continued pursuit of truth in countless other cold cases. The disappearance and subsequent conviction in the case of Barbara Jean Barber remind us of the enduring strength of a family's love and the unwavering dedication required to bring long-awaited justice. It also highlights the incredible progress of forensic science in illuminating the darkest corners of crime. Though Barbara's physical presence was lost, her story has ensured that she is not forgotten. We must never stop seeking answers for those who can no longer speak for themselves. What are your thoughts on this incredible cold case breakthrough? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing and sharing this video with others. Your support helps us continue to shed light on these important true crime stories. Thank you for watching.